a business owner in Austin, Texas, and I am currently the chairman for the Angers Sister City Committee. And I've been in running the organization for about 3 years. I helped set up the last Angers Day in Austin at St. Andrews University. And now we're here finally in Angers celebrating Austin Day.
I am a local historian. I've gone to the universities in the Austin area, studied a lot of Texas history of the American West and I was recruited to join the group for my knowledge of historic sites with French connections in Austin and Texas. I work at the historic French Legation, built by the representative from France to the Republic of Texas. I've worked with a famous French shipwreck, which is the reason why France has one of their flags as part of our Six Flags of Texas. And I've worked at another historic site where one of these Frenchmen was buried, the Texas State Cemetery. So I've worked with a lot of Texas history and a lot of French history in Texas.
I started in high school, and I followed my brother, actually. I am a year younger than my older brother, and he had actually started French in high school as well. And he was fortunate enough at the time to be able to journey to France for his class for a week. And he came back and he told me all about it. So the next year I enrolled in the class. Unfortunately, they stopped the travel program, so I didn't get to travel then. But then I continued because I really liked the language, and the culture just really intrigued me. So then I continued the studies in college, and then when I joined the military, I was stationed in Germany, right on the French border. So there was a lot of going back and forth, and as part of my job, I got to visit Bordeaux and Paris and several other places, and use my French language skills in working with my military counterparts, and of course visiting, parts of France as well. And then after the military, I just kept up my language skills in both French and German. And then started working with the Sister Cities program there in Austin.
Very similar. I started learning in high school. I chose French over other languages, especially Spanish. There's a lot of Spanish in Texas. Because I figured if I wanted to learn more practical Spanish, I could learn from my friends' grandparents and their parents who were from Mexico. It's more of a Spanglish, Texas Spanish. So they teach proper Spanish in school from Spain. And I was like, well, I want to try something more challenging, something different. So I chose French. Took it for 3 years in high school. It was a little rough for sometimes. They switched the books in the middle of my learning, so it's kind of hard to keep track of the change.
I understand, yeah.
But I loved the geography and the history and the culture. Of course, I love history, so I really soaked up all of the geographic information, sometimes more than the language. So I can still recall all the cultural parts of the class, especially the connection to the United States, which my classes really emphasized with New Orleans and Louisiana and all of that influence. I have family from Southeast Texas, distant family. They originally settled in Louisiana almost 200 years ago, so I have a small connection to that. And I did a lot of work, community service work, in New Orleans. So I was exposed to real life, American French in Louisiana, going to New Orleans a lot throughout my primary schooling. In college, I also took 2 more years as well. I couldn't get into Spanish in college. I thought about trying a new language, but it was so full, I was like, well, I already know French. I'm just going to get into French as well. And since I already knew it, it was a little bit easier to get into it, although it moved very fast in college.
I can understand that.
And I've been to France now my 3rd trip. First, it was a big European tour, so some time in Paris, and then I came back in 2019 before the pandemic with the performing group for D-Day celebrations in Normandy, and it really helped me with my language skills because I was one of the few who could actually read and speak a little French for all the Spanish and English speakers, so I could translate menu things and help them order and ask directions, so that really helped re-inspire my learning of the French language.
Is this your first time in Angers?
Oui.
First time in Angers, and yours too as well.
Yes, first time in Angers. My host family was just absolutely amazing.
Your host family was provided by our association.
Yes, it was provided by the association, and they were so grateful. They were so thankful of everything that the association did for them, as well as having me there, staying with them was great. For me, the most notable thing was breakfast. I happen to love bread. I don't really care much about food, generally speaking, but being an athlete, and having lived in Germany around the corner from a bakery, I visited there quite frequently. So the host family that had me this week was a literal 5-minute walk from Delaney's Bakery. So every morning Dudo would go out to the bakery and he would buy different kinds of breads. The long things, he bought brioches, he brought energy breads, he brought raisin swirled breads.
Yeah.
And just a large variety of different kinds of breads. And he would have those for breakfast with jams and tea.
Butter.
Yeah, lots of things. I skipped on the butter, but all the different kinds of breads I really appreciated because I happen to like bread. So that was the most notable thing for me, and that was all they had for breakfast. Was coffee. I drink tea, but just the different kinds of bread and jam, and that was breakfast.
Okay. So you don't have your oats and muesli?
I didn't have my muesli, I didn't have my oatmeal, but I did have some yogurt, which they call fromage blanc.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that there's a difference in French cuisine between what we call yogurt. To us, it's all the same.
Okay.
And in French, the yogurt is actually more of a pourable. It's a liquid. Whereas the fromage blanc, as I understand, is more of a solid, more substantial. If you pour it out of the jug, it just stands there on its own.
Yeah.
But if you had like a yogurt, a French yogurt, you could actually pour it out of the container.
Yeah.
So
It depends on the yogurt, but the taste is not the same.
exactly. For us, it's all the same. It's all yogurt.
Okay.
It covers the whole range of consistency.
It's also very sweet, even the plain yogurt.
Really?
Yes,
It's all sweet. Some
okay.
sugar added to it.
A little bit of sugar, but a lot of our yogurts are pre-mixed with fruit.
Yeah.
Blueberries, strawberries, apricots, peaches, pineapple. So it's pre-mixed with the fruit, or sometimes the fruit's on the bottom, and then the milky yogurt is on the top, and you just stir over this.
Yeah. So here we have this like fruit yogurts, and we have plain yogurts.
So that's what I was
Natural.
having. But I took the nuts and the granola, and I just kind of made my own little.
Muesli replacements.
Yeah.
Being the historian, I love all the history. Whenever I visit Europe and France and anywhere with this many museums and this much historic architecture, I go a little nuts and overboard. I can spend all day in museums and not really, I'm fine passing up on the food in the restaurants, which was great as well. But a museum is my happy place. So I loved visiting all the museums that we could, especially the Musée des Beaux-Arts, which Beaux-Arts in the U.S. is a little bit different. It's more an architectural term rather than fine arts. But even for being a fine art museum, they had history, they had natural history and sciences in there too. In the U.S., each of those subjects would be in a separate institution. So it was great to see it all in one and done so well. And of course, the historic architecture. We are very bad in Texas, especially, about preserving our architectural heritage. We call it preservation. It's nowhere near like here. So it really gives you a great sense of place. You feel like you're in Angers. You feel like you're in France or Anjou because of the architecture has been so well preserved. And that's something we don't really have as much of in the United States, even in some of our smaller towns. Places like New Orleans are fine, Charleston, South Carolina, maybe Boston, some parts of small towns in New England. But in Texas, it's very bad for architectural preservation, and it hurts my soul. So I come here and it's a breath of fresh air.
Okay.
I find that in Texas, and in America in general, outside of the East Coast, if a building is maybe 50 years or more older, it's torn down and demolished and destroyed and replaced with something that's brand new. So like Kyle was saying, that the preservation of history is really lost in a lot of cases. And the architectural styles of each era and each generation is generally lost. Now, I've seen some homes that have been saved, but remodeled and renovated, and the exteriors are changed fairly dramatically. So, in a sense, they also tend to lose a lot of the original flavor from that architectural era. And in some cases, like in the smaller towns, it's more well understood that they need to preserve that kind of heritage. But in some of the larger urban areas in the cities, unless they have a really good historical commission and a really good historical preservation society, those buildings typically are torn down to the ground, scraped clean, especially California.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
scrape it clean, and then they'll build a 20-story glass high-rise on the place.
Okay.
In some cases, if there is an incentive to do so, they will transport the building somewhere else.
I understand.
In other cases, they just wipe it clean. In Austin, we do have a really good historical preservation office in the permit department just for that purpose. So if a building is 20 years more older, then it has to, by default, if they want to do anything on the exterior of the building, it automatically has to go to historic preservation review. And then the historic preservation review will look at it and say, is this a historic building? Is there anything notable about the exterior architecture?
Yeah.
Is there something historically significant that happened in the building? And if not, do what you want. If there is, then you can't change the facade. The front facade has to remain as is. You can do anything you like on the inside. You can do anything you want on the back side of the property, but the part that faces the street has to be maintained, and the colors
And the same.
have to be maintained relative to that era.
Sometimes we lose our sense of place because we have a few iconic buildings, but nothing like here, where you feel like you're in Anjou and in Angers. For my past European travels, I've been exposed to that, so that was striking at first, years ago when I first came to Europe. But what struck me this time, because I was expecting the architecture much better, was just the different food scenes and stuff. I know Angers is a college town, Austin is a college town, but versions of food are different. Fast food in Angers is a lot of falafel and stuff, and a lot of that food. In America, of course, it's McDonald's and Burger King. Sometimes the schedules stuff. We've had a hard time adjusting to the schedules of the restaurants. They close for lunch for a couple hours, and they reopen, and then they close by like 6:30 or 7, and only the bars are open. There's a lot of bars, just like in Austin, because there's a young population of students. But the difference about the bars that I've noticed, in Austin, almost every bar has a stage, and you'll have either a small band, sometimes a big band, a big artist, or just a guy on a guitar. Here, it's very cafe style of a bar, and so you don't have the same musical element. Joker's has a room in the back, but in Austin, the stage would be in the corner up front next to the door, or outside where everyone can see and hear. So that's the real big difference between our nightlife scenes and nightlife in Anjou. There's a lot of people going out. It's great socializing. But they don't have the same musical element like we would at almost every place in Austin.
It's for me, it was not so much the differences, but the similarities that are really striking. Like you said, Austin and Angers, college towns. Austin and Angers both have a river that run through it. Austin and Angers have a lot of construction going on. And we were at the top of the chateau yesterday, and just anecdotally, I wanted to count how many construction cranes. Angers had 14 construction cranes with a population of 160,000 people. Austin, with a population of 1 million, has 14 construction cranes. Exactly the same number, but it's just the size. Austin is building 25, 35, and 50-story office buildings and apartment buildings. A lot of the new buildings going up in Austin are not offices anymore, but they're condominiums or apartments. In the downtown zone proper, I read a report several years ago about the numbers of new construction in Austin versus the rest of the state and the country. And Austin was at the top of the list for numbers of new buildings greater than 10 stories in the entire country. The number of brand new buildings greater than 10 stories in Austin is greater than any other new construction zone anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
To me, that was amazing. And we call Austin the construction crane, the state bird of Austin, because there are so many of them and they go up and down. So as soon as one building gets finished, the crane comes down and it moves across the street and starts building another building.
Oh, okay. Never stops.
It never stops. Never stops.
Not for the past decade.
Well, on average, Austin has had about 150 people per day move into the city for the last 21 years.
Wow.
An average of 150 people per day are relocating to Austin.
Are they all from Texas, around?
Everywhere in the world. Austin is very much now an international city. We have the Formula One. We have South by Southwest. Major national and global events take place in Austin. And I can't tell you how many different languages I've encountered just walking the streets of Austin.
Not to mention, the University of Texas has a huge international draw for international students, for not just graduate as well. Graduate
Undergraduate,
is big,
too.
but undergraduate has a large international population as well.
And the other thing, again, to follow up on that is Austin has something like 12 to 14 different colleges and universities. Another similarity between Austin and LNJ is that 25% of the Austin population are students.
Yeah.
So, because the numbers, we have about 50,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 students in Austin at any one given time. Austin Community College, UT, St. Edwards, Concordia University, University of Phoenix. All these are really large majors. Houston Tillotson College. There's also a theological seminary in Austin. So you look at that and you go, that's what keeps Austin young, keeps it vibrant. All of the new ideas, the youthfulness and the energy comes from a lot of the younger population that are continually transiting through Austin. Again, it gets to the live music people. That's why people want to come to Austin. And all the other events that take place in Austin is a big magnet for people from all over the world. So it creates a really nice mixture of cultures and languages and ideas and concepts. And yes, it's also the center of state government, which tends to move kind of slow. But with all this youthful energy coming in, our population keeps poking the politicians with a hot stick.
Yeah.
Saying, you're not moving fast enough. You're not doing enough for sustainability. You're not doing enough for clean energy. You're not doing enough for the environment. You need to move faster.
Does it work?
Yes,
Wow.
very much so.
That's great. And also there is a tramway story, something that I have heard about.
Austin has one tram line right now, and I have heard that it goes from nowhere people live to where no one wants to.
Yeah, I've heard that though too from you.
It goes to the convention center, the same thing that you have for the Centre de Congrès. Way to a residential area, about 20-25 miles. So only those folks who live in that one area can ride it to another one spot.
And there's nobody who is living there, according.
It doesn't go to the heart of downtown. It goes to the edge of down. It goes to the convention center and stops. So it doesn't go to the heart of downtown. It currently doesn't go to any major road. It goes from the way up here in the north. It goes way out to the east, and then it comes back to almost downtown and then stops.
And is there an explanation for that?
Black money.
Yeah.
When the voters originally, finally, after 20 or 30 years of the government and everyone else wanting to have a light rail system, we finally got approved for the first line.
It was an experimental line.
Exactly. It's a pilot. So
It was built on pre-existing old freight rails, so it follows an old freight train route, which is why it doesn't go anywhere like a museum or the university. It goes through residential areas or way in the country.
And the reason that they used the existing freight rail is because it was cheaper to do it that way. So now, after 30 some odd years, the pilot has been in place for several years, and the voters just recently voted to expand the light rail system to, I think, 4 new lines that'll go from way up north central all the way to the airport.
And straight down to the heart of South Austin, finally crossing the river. It hasn't crossed the river for 12 years.
It'll also go to downtown, and there will be a transit center that connects 3 of the lines together. So you'll have one from the south central, one from the southeast, all coming together, one from the north. That original line from the northwest, all these will kind of merge together again in the downtown. But it's a $10 billion project, so it's going to take some time to build.
Yeah, you told me 20...
I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. But
Minimum 10,
10
is
years.
what they say.
That's
but
what you
it's
told
gonna
me.
be-
Well, because Austin is very environmentally friendly, it's mandatory to do environmental impact studies. We have a lot of endangered species in Texas. we have a lot of endangered animals, not just trees and flora, but the animals as well. So we want to make sure that any of the impacts are not going to negatively affect any of the wildlife. And people in Austin do really care about their style of living. They don't want to have a lot of noise. Granted, during the construction there will be some, but the construction teams will have to mitigate that. But the quality of life for Austinites is very important. So they do want to have light rail to reduce the pollution. Austin is very environmentally friendly, so they've encountered a zero waste program. So Austin is committed to being zero waste by 2050. They've also committed to be by 2040, I believe, carbon neutral.
Okay.
And they have a lot of other environmentally friendly programs like recycling, rebates for composting, and rain barrels to encourage people to conserve water,
Yeah.
and to make their own compost so they can get to zero waste.
Yeah.
They have a lot of reuse and recycling clinics where people can take their damaged goods and learn how to repair them themselves.
Yeah.
Or find a skilled craftsman that can do it for them if they can't do it on their own.
We have something like here. We call it Repair Cafe.
Yes.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's the same.
I know yesterday after playing petanque, the petanque club captains, leadership, president, they really liked us. We exchanged emails and phone numbers, and probably going to send stickers and stuff like that back and forth from the clubs we're involved in to their stuff. So I think we made a friend there, and we also met a mutual friend of Mari Bay's, Francois, who took us to her house one evening, gave us wine and cheese and pate, and had a nice conversations. I think that's another great friendship, and of course our host families as well. We've all exchanged information to keep sending each other postcards or care packages in the future.
Yeah.
And as far as the food, yes, I've tried to at least be much better about not eating just a lot of bread, or just a croissant, or a pain au chocolat. I've tried to really have more of the famous French cuisine outside of the stereotypical stuff.
Yeah, because croissant you can find in Texas, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not as fresh. It's not as good. It's good, not as good.
Really?
Yeah, and for me, I think I made friends every day. And he had mentioned Francoise. As it turns out, Francoise actually knows a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And she was saying, hey, I know this man in Austin. He's a really good musician. Maybe you've heard of him. Tariq Hassan. I'm going, Tariq and I are Facebook buddies. So she brings out his CD. It's autographed by Tariq. And it's like, oh, I know this guy.
Excellent.
So that was really, really fun. It just shows you how small the world actually is and how tight Austin and Angers are. Many people that we've talked to, in fact, one of the men who was coaching American football at the sporting event this week, last year visited Austin, and he was wearing a Longhorns t-shirt and a Longhorns baseball cap. So I had to ask him, I said, pardon, monsieur, where did you get that t-shirt? He says, I was in Austin 2 years ago learning how to play football. At UT. So now he's come back here and he's teaching American football. And the guy who was teaching baseball, same thing. He learned baseball in America. So it's really intriguing to watch the growth of the connections between Austin and Angers, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I can't wait to come
We
back.
have received an email from Petanque Club this morning, and they were so happy. They said it was great. Thank you for inviting them. Thank you for letting us know them. It was such a great
They
email.
liked my hat.
The hats have been very eye-catching.
Yes, I
A lot
know.
of compliments.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you learned any new words in French?
I can't tell you how many.
Really?
Granted, I've been studying French for many, many years, but I have learned a lot of new things. I mean, it's the immersion in the culture. You can't help but pick up stuff, like a sponge. Just keep learning new things every day. Every time I look around, I see new things. It's been really incredible.
I can't repeat the word because it was at the screening of Jonah Hill's movie.
Oh, yeah.
Mid '90s, which had a lot of American curse words, which
Ah.
I now know the French equivalent. For,
Yes.
So I'm not gonna repeat
Okay,
the word.
congratulations. You have purely immersed yourselves.
Learn a lot of naughty French words.
Well, that's great too, because they are much used in French, in French language.
I met at some of the concerts, I've met some people that were really, really nice. I really hope to come back and meet them again, and perhaps invite them to America, and they can come visit us as well.
Well, I just thought of something kind of fun. In Austin, we have a catchphrase, kind of like a city motto and a mantra called "Keep Austin Weird."
Which is,
One moment.
yes, please. Yeah.
And while it started off as an economic thing to support local businesses, it's become a cultural icon to keep Austin local and keep that joy of life, the joie de vivre in Austin as well. So I'd say Angers has a very similar lifestyle as well. So rather than keep Austin weird, keep Angers awesome.
I would love to invite everyone from Angers to come and visit and experience true Texas hospitality. The way
Wonderful.
that we've experienced it here in Angers has been fantastic. But coming to Austin and experiencing true Texas hospitality, maybe we'll take you out, do some two-step in, get you some margaritas.
And some real tacos.
And some real
Some
tacos.
real-
Not this tacos. Real tacos.
French cuisine.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not spicy enough, or
They're not tacos.
It's not tacos.
They're
It's
not
tacos.
They're not actual tacos.
It's a panini.
It's yeah.
Like a panini.
Yeah. So we can school y'all on how to do some real Texas.
We'll get you a big old margarita.
Yes.
Some enchiladas.
Take you out two-step in. Sit you down in a field of blue bonnets. Take a picture. Really Austin things. Maybe take you down to Broken Spoke and listen to some really bad country music.
It's fun to dance. You go there for the dancing.
You don't go there for the music.
Willie Nelson played there.
But there's a lot of really great things to do in Austin. So I encourage anyone who has the opportunity and anyone in the association, feel free to contact me directly through Boyana or anyone else at the association or the Hotel de Ville. If you want to come to Austin, we've got to show you around. We have a great tourism office in Austin, and if you contact them and say, hey, what is there to do, they will send you a book. 1,000 things to do in Austin before you die. It's a big book. And if you look at the environs around, because Austin is in central Texas, which means it's right on the borderline of a lot of different geography. So when you look at Austin, it's really hilly, geography-wise, and you have a lot of rivers that kind of coalesce there. But if you go a little bit west of town, you get more hills and you get higher elevation, and it starts to get dry. You keep going west, you get into the high desert.
okay.
If you keep going east, you find trees that are 100 feet tall, because that's the borderline of Texas is where the dry line is. So a little bit west is drier, a little bit east is a lot wetter. So the more rain you get there, you get a lot more trees,
Yeah.
and really, and it's really interesting to see the break
Yeah.
in the topography of Austin and the different geographies as you get closer to the coast, which is only 3 hours away. We say anything in Texas is 3 hours away, but Texas is big.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of differences in Texas. You go from the dusty western to the wet eastern part. Just to give you an idea of the size, if you were in a car driving at the posted speed limits, which we do have, from El Paso to essentially East Texas, almost Louisiana, it's an 11-hour drive.
Okay.
And if you drive from the very southern tip to the very northern tip, it's about another 12 hours or more of driving.
And the roads are straight and wide. And what is the speed limit?
Normally it's 65, sometimes 70, sometimes 80. It just depends on what roads you're on.
Some
That's
miles per hour.
So that would be 200 kilometers per hour.
Je m'appelle Kyle Walker, je suis un historien du Texas. Je parle un peu de français, je connais français, je lis français, j'écris français. Mais parler comme ça.
Je m'appelle Christophe. Je suis le chef de le jumelage de Austin-Angers.